Howdy y'all, Caleb here, and we're continuing our series on 1,000 point army lists. Today we're looking at Koatl's Claw and 1,000 point lists that you can take using mostly Saurus units like Carnosaurs, Knights, Warriors. We're going to focus on those. So let's first off, if you already know what Koatl's Claw does, what Coalesced does, skip down to the lists. I'll put the chapter titles in the description. But let's take a quick look at what Coalesced does. And this will help if you're new to Seraphon or new to Koatl's Claw. This rundown will help you kind of remember some of these abilities that it has. So Coalesced is a very good subfaction for Seraphon because it gives us a couple of different things. One, we ignore any bravery modifiers. So if somebody's attacking you with bravery stuff, you ignore that. Predatory Fighters is a great one. It adds +1 to all of our jaw attacks. And this is actually really good for Saurus units because every Saurus unit has a jaw attack. Carnosaurs have jaws. The Riders have jaws on Knights as well as the actual cold one they're riding. So you get extra attacks there. Saurus Warriors, they attack with their weapon, but they also have jaw attacks. So you get a whole bunch of extra jaw attacks for those units. Primeval Domain gives us a ward save when we're within an inch of any terrain that's in our side. It can help us with our prayer rolls and will be deadly for the opponent if they move too close to our terrain. But Scaly Skin is really where it's at. We've talked about this before. In Coalesced, in Koatl's Claw, you're -1 damage to any attacks that are incoming. That doesn't count for mortals, which there's a lot of mortals out there now. But up against armies that do multi-damage attacks, you're taking 1 off of that. Very, very strong in the right matchups. So take that into consideration when we're talking about like how many wounds we're putting on the table. Remember that you're -1 damage, and that's so good. There'll be some matchups that you go up against, like Sentinels in Lumineth. They're just doing 1 damage. They don't care. Anything that has high volume but only 1 damage is kind of our Achilles heel. So look out for that. But a lot of stuff is elite in Age of Sigmar now and will reduce a lot of that damage. For Koatl's Claw, it's not played as much right now. We did a video a while back about how to fix Koatl's Claw because it is probably one of our weaker factions. It's definitely not as strong as Thunder Lizard right now. A lot of that has to do with the weaker war scrolls for warriors, Source Warriors. Source Knights can be good. They can throw out a lot of dice, but they don't have any rend. And in a world where there's armor stacking, save stacking, no rend is just really rough. Carnosaurs are good. They're extremely cheap, but they do suffer from not having much rend. And so hopefully Koatl's Claw abilities will get redone at some point, maybe in a White Dwarf or something, or we'll have to wait for the new book. But it does have some things that are useful. Here at the first one we're going to look at is Savagery Incarnate. You do get +1 to your hit rolls if you made a charge move with a Saurus unit. So you charge with your Knights, you get +1 to your hit. You charge with Warriors, you charge with Carnosaur, you get +1 to hit. So that's nice. It's a nice little buff there. We have other ways to get to that. So it's not really an amazing ability, but it's basically a free command point for that unit. Your command ability is basically the same thing. If you haven't charged, you can give them +1 to hit in that combat phase. So this is good. Well, it's okay. You can stack it with all-out attack if you want to. So like if you put all-out attack on another unit, you can use this controlled fury on a different unit. So you should always have most of your stuff at +1 to hit in this army, which is really important because a lot of Saurus hit on 4s or worse. So you really do need that +1 to hit just to get them back to a decent attack profile. Your command trait is Dominant Predator. This has to go on a Saurus General. So that's important because you can get out of this if you don't make a Saurus unit your General. Generally, you're going to have Saurus as your General, probably a Carnosaur or something. But if you're taking a Salon, you can get out of this command trait and use something different. But this Dominant Predator, roll a dice each time this general is used to issue a command to a friendly Koatl's Claw Source unit. On a 4-up, you receive extra command points. So you'll get a couple extra command points out of this game. Not a whole lot. There's a lot better command traits out there. So if you can get out of it, I'd try to. At 1,000 points, this can be useful because generally there's not as much command points floating around in these games at this lower cost. So it can be a way to get extra command points. Your artifact of power is pretty good. It's Eviscerating Blade. It goes on your first hero to receive an artifact, and you pick one of their melee weapons. Unmodified hit roll of 6 inflicts 2 mortal wounds in addition to any normal damage. This is a weird one because it's definitely in line with the old like Age of Sigmar 2, because you can't proc this ability and like the Scar Veteran, their ability, which explodes your attacks on 6s. So you got to choose one or the other. So it kind of conflicts with the War Scroll of the Carnosaur. But most of the time we're stuck. We're going to put this on a Carnosaur anyway. So you're just going to, you'll choose the mortal wounds, obviously. But you won't get to explode those attacks also. It used to be amazing getting a Carnosaur and you could stack all these things on top of them and just like go nuts with it. You can't do that as much in Koatl's Claw, and I think part of that's why this is a weaker subfaction. It was definitely written for the previous edition of Age of Sigmar. But hey, it's still fun. We still love Saurus. We want to put Saurus on the table. So let's take a look at some lists here. I've come up with a couple lists, and please let me know down in the comments below what your list for a Koatl's Claw would look like at 1,000 points. But I wanted to get 2 Carnosaurs in for sure. That fills our 2 behemoth slots. The Scar Veterans are the cheapest option at 215. I think they're definitely worth 215. A good price for that. The Old Blood on Carnosaur is 270. Not really worth it, I don't think, because his command ability is just a duplicate with everything else we've got. But I've got 2 Saurus Scar Veterans on Carnosaur. One's going to be my general. He's going to take the Disciplined Fury and Eviscerating Blade, and the mount trait Beastmaster. Beastmaster is a lot of fun because you can, it's flexible. So it has 2 different options. You can go Savage, which gives you extra attacks, or Swift, which gives you run and still charge. So that's critical because you'll have games where you'll need either one of those. So I need to make sure and get across the board and attack something. I'm going to run and charge. I need the extra attacks just to throw extra dice at them. Give me the extra attacks here. And you can pump up the Scar Vet decently well. You can do the Sacred Asterisms for an extra command point or extra attacks. You can do Beastmaster Savage for extra attacks. And then you can get the Scar Vet to spend a command point on himself, and all the 6s to hit will explode. And if you've charged, you're already at +1 to hit. So you can get some decent damage out of them. Not a ton, unfortunately, because there's not a ton of Ren, but it is only 250 points. So, it hits for about what you'd expect it to. The next one is just going to be a plain vanilla Scar Veteran on Carnosaur with the War Spear, and then a Skink Star Priest with Hand of Glory. Skink Star Priest is basically going to be in every single Koatl's Claw list you make, I think, because it's the only way to get any of these Saurus units that are your battle line to do any damage. Because with the Skink Star Priest, you are going to use their Venom Staff to point it at a battle line unit or Carnosaur if you need to. And 6s to wound are going to be mortal wounds. And so that's great on units, especially like Knights, who put out a ton of dice. Not very good attacks, but they have a lot of them. And so the Skink Star Priest is going to be in every single Saurus list right now, which is kind of a shame that all your damage relies on this little tiny skink when you're in a tough Saurus list. But it is what it is. Also, spell Hand of Glory is amazing. Reroll hit rolls of 1. We don't have a lot of rerolls left in the game, and so that spell is very good. I'm taking 20 Saurus Knights in this list. Now you can kind of configure them however you want to. I have them here in a unit of 10. That's my one I'm going to be buffing with the Skink Star Priest every time. The other 2 are going to be screens, objective grabbers, making sure nothing gets onto your Carnosaur before you have a chance to charge and attack with it. I've got them deployed here in kind of a box formation to screen out whatever would hit my Carnosaurs. You want to be just slightly back enough to where you could pile in with the Carnosaur afterwards if you need to, but not to get charged and get any damage on them. I think you could double reinforce one of those units of Knights if you wanted to. Take 15 Knights in one unit instead of 10-5-5. Do 15 and 5. That'll be an incredibly hard unit to destroy. 15 Saurus Knights is very hard to destroy, especially with Rally. As many dice as they're going to be throwing out, it's pretty good. Each Saurus Knight can put out 7 attacks each. because you've got 2 from the lance, which you're always going to take the lance because you get the bonuses of charge, which you've got to be doing in Koatl's Claw. So you get 2 from the lance. You get 2 from the jaws of the rider because he gets an extra 1 from Coalesced. And then from the actual cold one, you're getting 3 attacks. There you go. If I can count on my hands. So you got 7 total attacks from each knight. So, if you can get 10 in, which is kind of hard with unit coherency and stuff, you're throwing 70 dice at somebody. It's a lot. They're not great attacks, but some will go through, especially if you get mortal wounds coming through them. So that's my Calvary list there. Carnosaurs and knights. It's a lot of fun, but it does rely a whole lot on that Skink Star Priest. All right, list 2. This one I'm just going for. I'm trying to get warriors on the table. How many warriors can I get on the table at 1,000 points? And it turns out to be 50. You are limited to your 2 reinforcement points at 1,000 points, so you are kind of limited to how many warriors you can fit in 1,000 points. And this is what I came up with. So I'm still doing a Scarvet on Carnosaur. I think he works pretty well as our general. Has a good command trait to give us extra attacks, yada, yada, yada. I'm taking 2 Skink Star Priests here. And the reason is that's really the only way you're going to get damage out of these Source Warriors. You want spears on all these warriors so they can attack from the second ranks, and you have to buff them with that Skink Star Priest Venom Staff to get them to do much damage, really. So a Skink Star Priest is gonna tag along with each of these blocks of warriors. You can see them kind of deployed here and here. They're gonna be buffing these units of warriors as they go out into the battlefield. I'm probably gonna use my unit of 10 warriors as more of a screen, objective grabbers, keeping things off of my Carnosaur until I can get it charged in. So this list will fall apart pretty quick if your Star Priests die, if they get shot off the board. But not totally. You still have a lot of wounds. This is 70 wounds in a 1,000-point game, and it's all at -1 damage. And so at 1,000 points, 70 wounds is quite a bit. If you were to up this to 2,000 points, you're talking 140 wounds, all at -1 damage. That can be a chore to get through for some people, and maybe you can wear them down, score those objectives, and keep ahead in the points game. So 50 warriors in a list, a Carnosaur, 50 warriors, and a couple skinks. Not too shabby. Not too shabby. All right, on to list 3. Now this one I struggle because is this even a Koatl's Claw list? This one I'm taking out my Carnosaur. I want to get in Curse, which is a prayer that lets me do mortal wounds on 6s to hit. So what can I do to get Curse in this list? I need a prayer. I need a hero that can be a priest. And our perfect one is the Engine of the Gods. So it's a good unit. Even in Koatl's Claw, it's still going to be a great unit there. It has utility. It's going to heal. It's going to do some mortal wounds. And it's going to curse. So because I'm going to make the Engine of the Gods my general, I get out of that command trait that is required for Saurus. So I can put Nimble on this Engine of Gods, which just basically just gives him a +1 to save and +1 to move. So he's a little bit faster, which is important because we'll have an artifact here in a second. But that +1 to save is nice for this because if he's in combat, he's going to be +1 from his Stegodon Helm against most things. And Nimble will give him another +1. So it just makes him a lot tougher to kill. We are also taking a command to Entourage to get an extra artifact. So we're kind of working the system here to get as much stuff piled on these Engine of God to make him tough because he's going to be the centerpiece of this list here. So we do get that extra artifact. We're putting Cloak of Feathers on him. So that gives him -1 to hit, +4 to move, and he can fly. So now this Engine of Gods is pretty tough. He's going to be +1 to save, +2 sometimes to save. He's going to be -1 to hit. He's going to be flying, and he's going to be +5 to move. So a pretty good utility piece here. It can do damage in melee. It can do a lot of fun stuff, but the important thing is it can line up Curse where it needs to. So it's fast enough that it can fly, so it can get in range to do Curse and set that up for the Saurus Knights. We also have a Skink Star Priest. I'm going to put Eviscerating Blade on him. If Skink Star Priest gets in melee, he's probably dead anyway, but maybe he can pop a few mortals with his staff. Probably not, but I got to put on somebody. Hand of Glory there for the Skink Star Priest. I'm also taking a Skink Star Seer, and this is a nice add for knights. We used to run the Skink Star Seer. He was a must take with our knight build back in Age of Sigmar 2, and I think he's still a good piece here because the Skink Star Seer will allow us to charge 3d6 with a unit instead of 2d6. So these knights who are kind of slow anyway can now get across the board a lot faster. Imagine this also if you need that Engine of God to get into something. He's already going pretty fast. He's flying. Now he can charge 3d6 if he needs to. Skink Starseer also has some great spells. We're taking Hand of Glory here as his spell Lork, just because that's an amazing one. Reroll hit rolls of 1 is great. But also he can apply +1 to save or a -1 to the enemy's save. So he can basically give something that an enemy unit you're attacking, all your stuff's going to have essentially -1 rend. So that really helps with the attacks that we're putting in from the knights as we get into melee, or even the Engine of Gods if it's going in. So a great utility piece. 145 points, a little bit more expensive, but we'll generate some extra command points. Him and the Star Priest will give you some extra command points in this list, and that's always handy at these 1,000-point games. So I am taking 2 battle line units of knights, both reinforced up to 10 models. And I think you have room to play kind of the same way previously. You could make one 15, one 5, or split one up if you need more board presence. But 10 is a pretty good number. A little hard to maneuver sometimes with the unit coherency, but it helps them stick around a lot longer. So I envision you're probably pumping one up and sending it in. Maybe playing one a little bit more defensive, hoping to get curse off from the Engine of Gods. But if all your synergies line up right, if you get curse from the Engine of Gods off, let's say you get Hand of Glory from the Skink Star Priest, he's doing mortals on 6s to wound from his staff, and you've put a spell for -1 rend or -1 save on the enemy. A unit of 10 knights will destroy a lot of stuff that way. If you're probably not going to be rolling 70 dice with how I've got them deployed here, but you're going to be rolling close to that. You're going to be rolling a lot of dice, doing 6s to hit our mortal wound, 6s to wound our mortal wound, and you've got -1 save from the Starseer. So a pretty sweet little combo there that I think could work right if you line it up. So that's the best I could come up with for Koatl's Claw. So let me know if you've got a list you've run at 1,000 points for Koatl's Claw. Let me know what it is. Maybe there's some secret sauce there. I haven't been running Koatl's Claw all that often since the new update. Although I do run Knights a lot. I still love Knights. I think they're probably our best source unit at the moment. They're a lot of fun, throwing a ton of dice out at people. So let me know what your Koatl's Claw list is, and we'll see you on the next one.